Good afternoon and Happy New Year. My name is Emily Hill-Wright and I'm the Director of Operations at the Merchants House Museum. The Merchants House was built in 1832 and was home to wealthy merchant Seabury Tredwell and his family for nearly 100 years. It became a museum in 1936, complete with the family's original decorative arts, furnishings, and personal belongings, making it the city's only 19th century domestic interior preserved intact. In the mid-19th century, when the Tredwell family was living here, New Year's Day was the most celebrated winter holiday in New York, far more than Christmas. It was a day when the gentlemen of the city sallied forth to call upon their friends, family, and acquaintances. The ladies stayed home to receive the guests and preside over a sumptuous buffet and punch bowl liberally laced with alcohol. The custom was introduced in the 17th century by the city's Dutch founders, who were famous for their holiday hospitality. And according to 1820s Mayor Philip Hone, it was almost peculiar to New York. New York's tradition of New Year's Day calling continued well into the 19th century. The custom spawned admiration from the Philadelphia-based editors of Godey's Lady's Book, the foremost arbiter of taste at the time. In January 1842, they wrote,
"A custom obtains in the city of New York, and we believe to a considerable extent throughout the state, which we wish were adopted universally. In that city, business is suspended on New Year's Day, and the gentlemen make calls on all the families with which they wish to associate during the year. The ladies, of course, must be at home and receive their friends. Many a chain of friendship is thus brightened, which had been suffered to rust by the neglect of little attentions, and the heart is made better by feeling the demands of social life. We can hardly fail to be happier ourselves when wishing happiness to others, and this holiday might be so improved in cheering those who had been unfortunate in the past year, or encouraging those who were just beginning the experiment of living, that the philanthropist and Christian would hail it as the time of doing much good. What benefits might be effected on this day by a word of encouragement, of advice, or warning as the case might require it. If uttered in a kind manner, with a smile of friendly wishes on the countenance, the ladies might urge their brief appeal to the best feelings of human nature, and thus rouse the minds of men to their greatest and noblest aspirations."
Today, here on 4th Street, it is the morning of January 1st, 1855. The Tredwells are busy making final preparations for a day of paying and receiving calls. Let's look in on the family as they tell us about these holiday scenes.
Preparations for the New Year's Day reception were begun far in advance. Houses were cleaned from top to bottom, sometimes refurnished or even refurbished. For weeks before the New Year dawns, nearly every house in the city is in a state of confusion. The whole establishment is thoroughly overhauled and cleaned, and neither mistress nor maid have any rest from their labors. The menfolk are nuisances at such times, and gradually keep themselves out of the way, lest they should interfere with the cleaning. Persons who contemplate refurnishing their houses generally wait until near the close of the year before doing so, in order that everything may be new on the great day. Pantries were stocked with holiday fare, and new clothes were bought or made. Eliza Tredwell and her 6 daughters, along with the family's 4 Irish maidservants, spent much of December getting things ready for the New Year's reception, not the least of which is the ladies' grande toilette.
Here we meet Julia Tredwell, one of the daughters who will wish to be noticed by a young suitor come calling.
It's almost New Year's Eve, and Mother and all of us girls need new dresses. It would be considered vulgar for us to be seen in a dress that has been worn before. We employ the dressmaker to come and fit us in our new frocks for the occasion. It's certainly an exciting time of year. Mother wishes us to be sensible with her dress and ours. However, sometimes there are quarrels as her daughters prefer a much more modern style. There may even be some arguments over necklines and jewelry. There is the expectation that we are dressed quite finely for the day. but Mother always wants us to be within the bounds of taste. It is not that she doesn't appreciate new fashion. She just wants us to dress with propriety, for New Year's Day is when the many suitors come calling to our home. We all get new aprons for New Year's Day. It's an honor to serve the men paying calls to our house. These aprons are quite extravagant, though. The prices range from $5 to $100, as unpardonable as that may seem. The hairdressers, or artistes in hair as they call themselves, are always in great demand for this day. We all want our hair to be as magnificent as possible. Sometimes they will even begin their work at midnight to meet all of their engagements. Last year, my appointment was scheduled for 4 a.m. I could not even think of sleeping that night, for my elaborate hair would be totally ruined. I needed to sit upright in a chair. Could you imagine sleeping that way? This year, I hope to get an appointment at a much more reasonable hour. I hope it's not too late, though. I want to get a good night's sleep.
It was considered a mark of social prestige to pay or receive a great number of calls on New Year's Day. In 1843, former Mayor Philip Hone left his house at noon and made an astonishing 40-odd calls before 5 p.m., on average a visit every 7.5 minutes. The following year, on January 1st, 1844, he recorded this entry in his diary. "There must have been more visiting than on any former New Year's Day. I was out more than 5 hours, and my girls tell me they received 169 visits." In the front bedroom of the merchant's house, we happen upon Mr. Seabury Tredwell, patriarch of the family, busy here finalizing a list of the calls he intends to pay today.
Yes, what? Oh, good morning, and a happy New Year's Day to you. I'm sorry, can't tarry long. Hundreds of things to do to prepare for this post-meridian, including preparing my list of families I'm obliged to visit. You see, any gentleman preparing to start out on the round of calls today provides himself with a written list of the calls he intends making. This list is necessary, as few sober men can remember all their friends on such occasions. I've done this quite a few years now, and have noted that after the first dozen visits are over, such a list is greatly needed. At the outset, of course, everything is conducted with the utmost propriety, but as the day wears on, the generous liquors imbibed may begin to tell upon the callers, and many eccentricities, to use no harsher term, are the result. I, of course, am not an exemplar of this habit, but rather like to think I set an example by my more conservative intake of, shall we say, the nectar of the day. One needs to establish a routine in order to be efficient in one's calls today, and to avoid the shame of inadvertently slighting an esteemed family or colleague by overlooking one's social obligation. Now, mind you, the commonality begin their calls about 10. The elite do not begin till noon and have been known to wind up at midnight. Men who keep carriages use them, the only day in the year in which many see the inside of their own coaches. 'Tis a rare thing indeed to see a woman on the streets on New Year's Day. It is not genteel, sometimes not even safe. Elegantly dressed men in yellow kids are seen hurrying in all directions. They walk singly and in groups. The goal is to make many calls. At one time, I'd make between 50 to 100 during the course of the day, and I know some who claim to have made even more. But I no longer feel the need to join in that competition. Men drive up to the curbstone or run up the steps, give the bell a jerk, and walk in. The name of one of the callers may be slightly known. He is attended by half a dozen who are entirely unknown to the ladies and whom I deem they will probably never see again. A general introduction. The ladies bow and invite to table, a glass of wine or a mug of punch poured down in haste, a few pickled oysters, and then the intellectual entertainment commences. Fine day, beautiful morning, had many calls. Oysters first rate. Great institution this New Year's. Can't stay but a moment, 50 calls to make. Another glass of punch? Don't care if I do. Good morning. And this entertaining conversation is repeated from house to house till the doors are closed on the business of the day. I suggest an outside observer take a post on Murray Hill and look down Fifth Avenue. He'll see sidewalks crowded with finely dressed men, the street thronged with the gayest and most sumptuous equipages the city can boast. My dear, the whole will look like a carnival. Well then, it will shortly be time to go off and make the rounds. I bid you good day and a most happy New Year. Perchance we'll pass each other later today. Much work yet to do, much to do.
Here in the richly decorated rear parlor, the Tredwell ladies shall serve gentlemen callers glasses of potent punch and an elaborate buffet.
Bonjour, good morning. I am Jacques, your punch expert. I must tell you that this is the most wonderful holiday that we have here in New York, and I am so privileged to be able to come house to house and make the punch for all these good people. Let me tell you, however, the preparation for New Year's is a toilsome and expensive thing. Great rivalry exists among the people of style about the table. How it shall be set, the plate to cover it, the expense, and many other considerations that make the table the pride and plague of this season. To set well a New Year's table requires taste, patience, tact, and cash. It must contain ample provision for 100 men. It must be loaded down with all the luxuries of this season, served up in the most costly and elegant style. Turkey, chickens, game, cake, fruits and oysters, lemonade and coffee, and whiskey, brandy and wines, and more than all, and above all, the punch. This mysterious beverage is a New York institution. To make it is a trade that few understand. Men go from house to house on an engagement to fill the punch bowl, lemons, rum, cordials and honey, and mysterious mixtures from mysterious bottles brought by the compounder. These enter into the drink. So delicious is it that for a man to be drunk on New Year's Day from punch is not considered any disgrace. The next day, one half of New York is sick. Doctors are in demand, headaches and various other ailments caused by punch are frequent. The businessmen have a weary, sleepless look, and it requires 1 or 2 nights rest to restore the mind and body to their proper condition. Should you call on a lady friend, you will probably find her indisposed. The cause of her sickness, you can easily imagine. But I tell you a secret. My favorite punch to make is not difficult at all. This one is for the 69th Regiment. They're just down the street over here. But these Irish men who serve the country, they have a very simple punch. I don't tell them how simple it is, however. But it includes this recipe. 1/2 a wine glass of Irish whiskey, 1/2 a wine glass of Scotch whiskey, 1 teaspoonful of sugar, 1 piece of lemon, and 2 wine glasses of hot water. This is a capital punch for a cold night. This is only for 1 mug, however. You must to make much of this for the entire regiment. So I wish you a happy new year and don't overdo.
Finally, it is New Year's Day. Everything has been well prepared and is now perfectly ready for our guests coming calling on the Tredwells. Gentlemen, do remove your hat and leave your calling card on the hall table before proceeding to the parlor, where you will be greeted by none other than Mrs. Eliza Parker Tredwell, the matriarch of the family.
Welcome and happy New Year's Day to you, gentlemen. Such a wonderful day, is it not? This good old Dutch fashion of receiving visits on New Year's Day cannot be put down. I doubt such a fine custom will ever lose favor in the eyes of our citizens. It makes for social feelings and lively hearts. There is so much life and spirit in the day. It is indeed, as you can see, my favorite day of the year, because as New Yorkers, it is a custom that is so uniquely ours. Why, New York without New Year's would be like Rome without Christmas. We have had a great deal of company. Oh, no doubt you are quite grateful for this fine weather as you go about making calls. I do trust you walked rather than attempt to hire a carriage. With so many gentlemen out and about on this day in the neighborhood, I hear that the Broadway traffic is completely halted. But I do delight in hearing the sounds of the sleigh bells. Such a cheerful sound. Oh, of course you do know my daughters, Phoebe, Julia, Sarah, and of course Gertrude. Oh, my 2 married daughters, Elizabeth and Mary, are watching my beloved granddaughters as they open their New Year's Day presents. We have all of us received and given presents on this day. We exchanged our gifts earlier this morning before Mr. Tredwell, along with my sons, Horace and Samuel, commenced their own calling. New Year's presents have quite abounded this year, my dears. Why, I hear that this is the Parisian mode of celebrating, and we are getting into it very fast indeed. Oh, I gave my husband a gold watch. I received a lovely pocket Bible and a large, handsome book, Scenes in the Life of the Savior. Why, even Bridget, one of my own servants, presented me with a sugar heart with 2 doves on it as a token of her regard for me. Very sweet of her indeed. Now, please, my dears, have a warm by the fire and then help yourselves to some refreshments at my buffet table, which is quite laden this year. You will find oysters of every variety, lots of meats, ham, mince pies, turkey, jellies, donuts, and with fine wines and liquors picked out by Mr. Tredwell himself. Oh, and of course, my dears, my perfect whiskey punch is always popular. And do have a slice of our New Year's seed cake, or perhaps one of my waffles. These are made in the old Dutch tradition from my own dear mother's recipe. Of course, there is plenty of coffee for you. You will need it for strength, as I'm sure you have many more visits to make on this day. My dears, we have indeed been spared to the close of another year in health and in prosperity. I am so happy, surrounded with so many comforts and blessings. May we all be truly humble and, with new resolutions, begin the year living to our Savior. Thank you for calling, my dears, and please express to all your families my sincerest good wishes for health, happiness, and prosperity in the new year.
As the 19th century progressed and New York City grew larger and larger, it became impossible to travel the long island of Manhattan and visit all your friends and acquaintances in a single day. The rising popularity of Christmas also contributed greatly to the decline of New Year's Day customs in New York. In 1870, Christmas was declared a national holiday, and regional traditions like New York's custom of paying New Year's Day calls began to die away. By January 3, 1888, the New York Times had this to say:
This custom of calling on New Year's Day began when the city was small, but it has now quite outgrown those possibilities which the original usages of the day could compass without difficulty. But by far the most noteworthy circumstance in yesterday's history was the almost complete death of the ancient custom of call-making. Some of the old boys, however, could have been seen yesterday in their spotless kid gloves and shiny tiles, making the rounds as solemnly as they did 30, 40, or 50 years ago. The fact remains established, however, that the observance of New Year's Day by the general making of calls is a thing of the past.
But do not mourn the loss of this charming custom. Here at the Merchants House Museum, it is always 1855, and on January 1st, you will find the tradition of New Year's Day calling here alive and well.